That's not good. Sorry, I made a mess. Got like a buffet of food here.
That's okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to begin by welcoming everyone to the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of Wednesday, April the 3rd, 2024. My name is Ian Morrison. I'll be chairing committee meeting today. I'd like to begin by recognizing that CVRD is on the unceded territories of the Cowichan, Malahat, Subasat, Halalt, Penelakut, Staminas, Liaxin, Pakwachin, Diti-Dot, and Pachi-Dot nations, whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. I'd like to note that Director Acton will be joining us remotely today. We are missing Director McClinton, and I'd like to ask everyone to ensure that your electronic devices are either muted or on silent. And with that, Ms. Ferguson, what have we got first?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have the approval of the agenda with no additions.
Moved. We have a seconder? Seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Next.
We have the adoption of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting minutes of March 20, 2024.
Moved. Seconder. It's moved and seconded. Any discussion of that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Any business arising from the minutes?
We have no business arising from the minutes, and on to public input period.
Thank you. The public input period is to offer the public an opportunity to comment on an agenda item before the committee considers the item. Public input period procedure policy allows for an allotment of 15 minutes where the speaker is welcome to comment on any item on the agenda for a maximum of 3 minutes. This excludes items that are or have been the subject of a public hearing. The speaker should comment in a polite, calm, and courteous manner using respectful language, civility, and decorum. And with that, I'd like to welcome anyone that would like to provide input to committee today. Right now. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and fellow directors. I was wanting to speak to R4, the Development Services Manager's report. And there's a question contained in this. I'm not expecting an answer, but back on March 6th, Mr. Tippett was to talk about the comprehensive zoning bylaw, and it was pulled from the agenda. And I had asked a couple of times if it was coming back, and it doesn't appear to, unless it is considered under Part 4 of R4, coincidentally R4 again, under the MOCP and comprehensive zoning bylaw coordination topic. We, as a community member and a member of an advisory planning commission, we were very excited for the MOCP and the comprehensive zoning bylaw. But it's beginning to feel very heavy because it's been delayed and delayed and delayed. And it is a point of frustration for those of us that serve on your advisory planning commission. So when we do have outdated regulations and zoning, and to see this delayed, to 2026, maybe even 2027, is very disheartening for me as a member of the public and as a member of the Advisory Planning Commission. I would really like to see that this work gets a priority and is developed sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. like to encourage anyone else that would like to provide input on any of our agenda items today to come forward now. That looks like it. So we will now move on to the next item, Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are on correspondence, and we have a grant and aid request from Electoral Area E, Cowichan Station, Satlam, Glenora, re Cowichan Green Community.
I think for the purposes of committee, we'd like you to read the recommendation.
Thank you. The recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area E, Cowichan Station, Satlam, Glenora, in the amount of $250 be provided to the Cowichan Green Community in support of the Cowichan Valley Climate Solutions Expo at the Hub on May 25th, 2024.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Martman. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Next item, Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to reports. R1 is a report from the Development Services Division, reapplication number DVP24B01 for 2170 Wildflower Road, PID 025002660.
Ms. DeBenna, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I don't, is the slide, okay. Hopefully I didn't save over anything. Okay, so the application before you is for a development variance permit. Should I wait? I'll wait. Oh, great. Okay, thank you. Development variance permit application, DVP, to reduce the rear parcel line setback. There's a lot happening right now.
Sorry.
I kind of liked that, but okay. Okay, so here we are with the DVP application to reduce the rear parcel line setback from 4.5 meters to 1.79 for an accessory building. Great, there's the slide there. Notices were mailed out to owners and occupants of neighboring properties in accordance with bylaw number 4483. As far as I'm aware, there's been no public correspondence received. Staff are recommending issuance of the variance as it appears minor in nature, does not appear to undermine the intent of the rear parcel line setback regulation, nor negatively impact neighboring properties. Thank you. I can take questions.
Thank you, and just for everyone's reference, to entertain questions from committee to staff, and when that concludes, we'll ask if the applicants would like to provide any additional information to committee before we put a motion on the floor and discuss the matter. So I would look to committee members, and could you lower the mind readers, so I can see everyone on screen. So entertain questions for staff now. Any questions for staff? Look at that, no questions for staff. Must be a very well-written report. Go to, now I would ask if the applicants, who've either got Jeff Peters or Ron McNeil, are in the room, or would anyone like to provide, or online, any additional information to committee members before we consider a resolution?
Yeah, Ron McNeil here, and Mr. Peters is actually in my office as well if you have a question of him. The reason for the request is the 15 meters or 15 feet behind the 4.5 meters in the rear yard becomes a bit of a sort of a lost no man's land. It's not something you can really, set up a garden or landscape or anything else in, but also to get vehicles into the garage. The further behind the house it is, the easier it is to maneuver because the building cannot be right on the property line on the side. So we've got to we need as much wriggle room as we can to get to get a vehicle shifted over to line up with a garage door. So that's initially what's setting it off. We would even love to be a little closer to lot lines, but the unprotected or the fire response time in CVRD requires that we pretty much maintain the 8 feet from the lot lines. And just on that, the rear lot line, as it's written, I think if you read the report, Jamie's explained that once they get down to a certain distance, for some reason they measure off of roof overhangs instead of walls. we're still asking for basically the walls on both sides to be at the 2.4 meters. That allows us to meet code for fire protection. But it's as far as we can kind of go back. So we're just trying to make the best of it for maneuvering ability to get past the house. And that's essentially the crux of it. Thanks.
Look to committee. Any questions for the applicant? Director Acton.
Actually, I think this one is for staff. So when I was reading the report, it kind of jumped out at me, the wording on the suite part, but I would think that maybe that was old language and that a suite wouldn't be an issue. And then the second question is, for that whole street, we've had a bunch of different applications come forward, and we discussed something for the whole street. Does anyone remember what that was?
Ms. DeBenna?
Through the chair to Director Acton, I can answer the first question, potentially, not the second one. So the discussion about the suite, this report, I'm thinking back here, the bylaws haven't been changed or amended at this time. So currently the property is not permitted a detached suite. Whether that changes, that's a whole separate project.
May I add something there?
Just to follow
The
up.
street,
Hang on, Ron.
Yeah.
There was a question
sure
for
thing.
staff, so hang on. And so Director Acton, I think what our staff have told us that the question of the suite is up in the air and she's unable to answer the second question. Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, so I guess I'm confused then. I thought the suite amendment applied to all of Area B, and then there was another amendment that kept happening for this neighborhood. So, because that would mean that every person who comes forward with a suite at this time would have to get or on that road would have to get some kind of variance, or my understanding is secondary suites are allowed now.
Ms. DeBenna?
Through the chair, this is not a secondary suite. It's a separate building. It's an accessory building. They're proposing it to be a garage with an upstairs, which currently is not permitted as a residence.
So the question at hand right now is the variance, not the possible future use. Ms. Pressman?
So there is a note at the end of the report from the general manager that with the proposed amendments that will be considered, that have been discussed by the board, that are coming forward for readings, a detached suite may be permitted, depending on the servicing capabilities. So there's a note from the general manager that if the owners desire to, in the future, convert this to a suite, that it's recommended that detailed records be kept to allow for that conversion. But currently it's not permitted, it may be in the future.
And the request before us is on a variance, on setbacks.
And sorry, one more thing through the chair to Director Acton. I'm not sure what the amendment specifically for that road or that area is that you're mentioning.
Any further follow-up, Director Acton?
No, thank you.
Turn to committee. Any further? Mr. McNeil?
Only because I happen to have involvement with the people doing a subdivision across the street from this address. I think what Sarah's remembering is that Mike Tippett raised the question that there's more candidates on this street for subdivision or whatever because of their lot sizes, and he was entertaining sort of a global rezoning of this street for later, not while we were in that process. So I think that's the only thing I've heard of that's sort of involved Wildflower alone from anything else.
Thank you. So, Director for the area, what's your pleasure?
So thanks, Ron. That's probably it. I would like to move the staff recommendation, and I understand that it's just a variance, but I am surprised that they're not allowed suites at this time. But
It's been
surely it's
moved and
coming.
seconded. Any discussion on the item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries, and that should appear at the next board meeting of Wednesday, April 10th, 2024, under the Electoral Area Services Report. Next
Thank you. Good
item-
afternoon.
Thank you. Next item is Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. R2 is a report from the Development Services Division, reapplication number RZ23E01, Appaloosa Way, PID 009845119 and PID 009849637 and PID 009849581.
Thank you, Mr. Buchan.
Thank you, and next slide, please. This report reintroduces a rezoning application that has been made to request modifications to the density bonusing provisions of the Comprehensive Development Residential R5 zone. The agents are now proposing to develop 8 fee simple lots. Next slide, please. The EASC considered a previous proposal for a 17-lot subdivision at their December 6, 2023 meeting. The agent has since revised their subdivision plan and has reduced the proposed build-out from 17 lots to 8 in an effort to address the board's feedback. The revised plan includes larger lots with the conceptual locations for house, parking, and septic footprints shown. There's also a revised environmental report, attachment B in the report provided, which comments on the updated layout in relation to the CVRD's development permit area guidelines. And next slide, please. The individual lots have been highlighted on the plan on your screen. With an 8-lot proposal, this means that only 35 of the 50 lots permitted in the R5 zone will be achieved. If this application were to proceed under the existing density bonusing provisions, 2 of the proposed lots would be transferred to the CVRD. In lieu of providing those lots, the agent is proposing to transfer the entirety of the covenanted lands to the CVRD as a condition of rezoning, and that is shown on screen as proposed park. Next slide, please. Some useful backgrounds just to provide context. In 2007, the CVRD board amended the zoning bylaw to create the R5 zone. This zone allows for a maximum of 50 lots within the R5 zone, subject to conditions. Most notably was an obligation to provide a fraction of new lots created to the CVRD for park and fire protection purposes. At present, 27 lots have been developed, meaning that the subject lands could be further subdivided into a total of 23 lots subject to those conditions. If the maximum 50 lots enabled under the R5 zone were to be developed, the CVRD would receive 7 lots. And next slide, please. In 2007, the previous owner also provided a letter to the CVRD advising that they intended to provide a gift of the land without charge to the CVRD. However, this was intended to be separate from rezoning commitments and was secured via a covenant with the Land Conservancy. At present, the CVRD is not a signatory to that covenant, and there's no mechanism in that covenant to gift the lands to the CVRD. Next slide. The application was referred to internal divisions. Preliminary comments have been received from the Parks and Trails, Emergency Management, and Community Planning divisions. These are documented in attachment D of the report, which has both the old and updated comments. Parks and Trails has noted that the covenant lands are referenced in the Electoral Area E Community Parks and Trails Master Plan. A referral to the Electoral Area E Parks Advisory Commission may be worth consideration, and there is no commission for Electoral Area F at this time. Next slide, please. At this preliminary stage, the board is asked to consider a referral to external agencies for input, which would include the Land Conservancy. Once that feedback has been provided, it will be addressed through a subsequent staff report. And next slide. Other options, apart from sending to external agencies, would be to deny or to request additional information. I'm here for questions, and the agent is in the room.
Thank you, Mr. Buchan. Questions for staff? Well, I have one. Go ahead, Director Nicholson. Okay, so it's been practice here for, I think, as long as I've been here, and I may have misread the map, but is this development not contiguous to the Area F electoral area boundary line?
Sorry, I don't know if I quite caught that.
So I'm assuming, since there's been Area F and E APC involvement from very early on in this application, that there has been referrals to both Area E and F APCs, and I'm just wondering why the staff recommendation doesn't include a referral to the Area F APC.
Sorry, it was just to the Area E APC because that's the electoral area it's in, but we could certainly add electoral area F to have a joint meeting.
I would appreciate that. It's been the practice, at least on this file and a number of others, for quite some time, and would be appreciated.
Make a note of that.
Director Nicholson.
Well, I think just on that particular point that you raised, I think that they did joint things when things were in Area F, because your Area F was part of the Area E OCP at the time. So I think that was the rationale for that. What I would like to know is, can a trail be built on the covenanted land without the CVRD owning it?
Through the chair, potentially, but someone would have to operate that trail. And right now, the Land Conservancy is the other signatory to that covenant, and they're not in the business of developing that trail.
But presumably, I guess my question is, if you had an agreement with the Conservancy to build and maintain the trail, could that happen?
Someone could.
So really I'm just trying to figure out what the value of having it in our hands is. It's protected, it's otherwise protected, is that correct?
Through the chair, it is protected through the covenants. However, we're not a signatory to the covenant, so that could be changed with the Land Conservancy. The covenant restricts the use of the land, but we're not a signatory to that covenant.
Right, I'm just trying to figure out what the benefit of being a signatory is. If the land's protected and if you could come to an agreement with the Conservancy on building a trail and maintaining it, then it just seems to me there's not that much value in having it in our hands, is it? Is there?
Parks has commented that there's value in it in the sense that it's a trail connection.
Right, but you could make the trail connection, is my point.
Someone would have to make that regardless, and if it's not us, the question would be who. Right,
but we could do it if we had an agreement with the Conservancy.
At the moment, we're not a signatory to the covenant. It's privately owned land.
I'm not getting a clear answer. Do you have to be a signatory in order to have an agreement with the Conservancy to build and maintain a trail there?
You would have to have an agreement through the chair with the covenant holders, which is whoever owns the land, plus the Land Conservancy.
And, okay, so with the I get it now. Got you. And then the other question I had was around this amenity contribution. So the original zone with the density bonusing or whatever allowed you to have, if you had up to 50, how many, I guess my question is, what the proposal is to not get any more lots. So that would mean 2 lots, but there would be 35 lots subdivided in the end. And what is there sort of a general rule of thumb of what would be a reasonable, like, amenity when you get a subdivision of 35 lots?
Through the chair, we don't presently have a community amenity policy. I don't think there is necessarily a standard, unless one of my coworkers wants to correct me on that, but the provisions that were in the existing zone were anticipating amenity contributions for lots in excess of 22 lots. So it's not going to be a whole lot in excess of 22 at the end of the day if we restrict it to just the 8 additional lots.
Right, but with the 8 additional lots, we would, according to the agreement, have rights to 2 more, which would add up to 4.
Yes, we presently have, through the chair, 2 lots. I understand that one of those is being sold for fire. The other one is presently held for parks. We would be receiving 2 more if the application were to move forward under existing zoning provisions.
And so the reason that we have amenity agreements is so that we have an ability to provide for the increased servicing that would be required, and so in that case, it was for fire. And then the other reason that we need it in that area is for trail building and maintaining, because.
Through the chair, for parks, so it could have gone towards trail building, but other things as well.
And so, just for just for some history, when this subdivision, this zone, the developer that originally had was successful in having this zone was supposed to have a trail along the roadsides, and apparently it was built not to our standards, so that it has become while the trail still exists, we do not have an agreement with MOTI to maintain it, because we would have to replace it, and so this whole, I guess my point is, this whole subdivision since the get-go has not been well managed and has become problematic. And had anyone looked at the land properly and understood the value of the wetlands and so forth, then yeah, I think people might have paid a lot more attention and maybe not even have had the rezoning happen, because I just think it's a problem. However, that said, my other point I just wanted to make was I heard the other day and this just speaks to developing in inappropriate areas. The other day I heard that in rural areas in general. The other day I heard that the beaver dam at Wake Lake had been dismantled by a resident, and which of course dropped the water levels just when all the toads and frogs are breeding. So that's a real problem and that just speaks to the problem that we have in rural areas when we develop sensitive areas and people don't really understand the sensitivity, and there's lots more people and they have these great ideas that they want to check out how a beaver dam's built. Then it doesn't necessarily work well for the environment. So I think this, I really, yeah, I should stop there because we haven't heard from the developer.
Any further questions for staff? Seeing none, does the applicant have anything they would like to add or bring forward? Welcome.
Mr. Chair, committee members, thank you very much for hearing the application again today. So the last time I was up here was presenting a plan that was just basically showing a proposed subdivision plan that showed constraints. The history of the property is that the previous developer had it. They had these agreements. There was a lot give back with the intention of anything over 23 lots. We acquired these lands without it being disclosed to us that those lot give backs have all been pushed off to the later phases of the projects, and then of course the environmental sensitivity just further constrained the lots. This is currently zoned for approximately 23 lots with the minimum lot sizes of 1 hectare, not taking into consideration the 1212 clause that removes the density allocation for wetlands. So last time we just showed a 17 lot subdivision to express the constraints, not that it was a final subdivision plan, but ultimately that wasn't a very environmentally sensitive plan, and it was requested that we go back and create a subdivision plan that was more environmentally sensitive, and we've showed that and expressed that through this 8 lot subdivision, which we are just letting you guys know that the development is under financial constraints, period. If it was able to achieve the 23 lots, then yes, the additional givebacks for the lots would absolutely make sense, and it would become a part of the plan and a part of the costing of the development. The reality is the previous developer pushed all of these off to this, and then environmental regulations have changed, plus the 1212 has come into play, and all of these things have basically led to financial viability just not making sense for any give back. So we're caught in this situation where the park, I believe, is a massive community amenity contribution one way or another. We know that park acquisition is a big objective of the CVRD and Area E specifically, my understanding is. So we're trying to develop much more respectfully, which this subdivision showcases, that we have come way off of our road construction. We have eliminated a large quantity of the road construction. One on the eastern part, I don't know if we could get the map up, but just to show, but on the eastern part of the property, we've completely eliminated the road that would be built into the lands, and it's just turned into a lot. And on the western portion or western access, it's been substantially reduced. Yeah, thank you. So lot 8 area is where we did have another road. We've totally withdrawn that road and deleted it, so there's no road construction. And the road that is a dead-end road currently off of Pinto, or Belvedere Crescent, is a dead-end road, which is intended to continue into this subdivision, but is comes just enough to access the minimum amount of lots that make this a viable subdivision, without any give back. The give back portion that we're talking about also includes additional lands that were misrepresented in the zoning through different areas here, but there are some additional portions of land that we're looking to remain as P2 and protected land. But ultimately, we're just trying to make something work with this property that is just sitting there, with park land that is currently owned by us privately, as mentioned with the TLC covenant, but we want to turn those lands over to the CVRD, full entitlement to CVRD, remove the give back so that we have the financial capacity to just continue and complete the subdivision with much larger lots, typically on average, than the minimum lot sizes of the remainder of the development. That's our request. We did the work to go and revise a different plan that is shown going from 23 originally down to the 17 from our last meeting, and now we're down to 8. And as you can see, we're in a situation where there's really just not much left to do other than try and cooperate, give the land to the CVRD, finish off the subdivision, get some more lots out of this, complete the Saddleview Estates subdivision that was started in 07, and carry on.
Thank you for that. Director Wilson, question for the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's two things I heard there that I'd like to clarify with you, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
And the first one is the mention of financial constraints and viability here. Did I understand that they are becoming a major factor in continuing this project?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, with financial obligations of givebacks of lots, it takes everything off the table.
And a follow-up, please, Mr. Chair. And I don't like to use the word assume, but I've got to use it in this context here.
Yep.
Can I assume that the planning department and land use departments and yourselves, as the developers, have done as much as possible to alleviate the concerns that the area director has brought up?
Absolutely, and I think this plan illustrates that.
Okay.
It doesn't require any variances. It doesn't have a big part of our last subdivision was there wasn't much buildable area in the original lots, and there was also lots that had land that was bisected by riparian. So lots had areas that they couldn't get to without crossing any riparian. And so this has taken all of that out of there and has all the building areas for septics and wells without encroaching, while respecting even the DP setbacks that are in addition to the provincial SPIAs.
Good, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any further questions for the applicant? Can you lower the slide, please? Can't see Director Acton. Oh, she's not there anyways. Seeing none, thank you very much. Turn to the director for the area.
I'd like to move the recommendation, and I appreciate that the developers come back with the plan he has. Thank you.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Next item, R3, Ms. Miles Wilson. Just so everybody's aware, after we discussed R3. We'll take a short break and come back for R4 afterwards.
Hello. Thank you. So I'm here to talk about advocacy to senior levels of government, as noted. So you'll recall that at the last board meeting, there was a directive to come back to discuss rural roadway issues in particular at this committee meeting in advance of the AVICC convention, but also in advance of the Committee of the Whole, which is next week, which is where there was also a directive to talk about broader issues of senior advocacy to senior levels of government. You'll recall that recently we received our responses from the provincial government regarding the 3 UBCM resolutions that we submitted to the last convention. One of them was regarding private managed forest lands, but 2 of them were pertaining to issues regarding rural roads. One of them was related to the state of the infrastructure, and one of them was related to concerns regarding speed in commercial and village centers. And so the AVICC will accept resolutions up until next week, the day of the Committee of the Whole, actually. But those are really designed to be for emergency issues or emerging issues that are not really, that are new. So I wanted to pose an alternative to this committee that we're not really done closing the loop on the resolutions from last year related to rural roads. So I had a conversation with the Ministry of Transportation this past week. And so 2 things to that regard. The first is that related to speed concerns, if there are still speed concerns in the community centers in the commercial cores, the district manager would entertain a submittal from committee regarding priority areas for the ministry to investigate. And so if you wanted to consider that, there could be a formal request to the district office to investigate those areas. They would assign an engineer to take a look and to see if they would agree with those observations that you're seeing in your communities. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is that we've asked them to come to committee for an operational update. So we're looking at dates in May, so you can hear it straight from the source on what the plans are regarding the maintenance projects for the next year ahead. So maybe I'll pause there and then I can talk about forward-looking items regarding UBCM, if that's of help.
Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair. Thanks, Danielle. Advocacy with senior levels of government, and this is on a broader spectrum type of thing apart from the roads there. And this is something that we have to bring up over and over again, because there was, at the MFA meeting that I attended last week, there was a discussion on this kind of thing with, we need to go to senior government and say, it's all very well you telling us to do this or asking to do this. How do we advocate more to say, we can do this, we're capable of doing this, when are you going to give us some money to actually do it? So is that part of this discussion where we can say through UBCM or through AVICC, yes, we can do it, give us some money to do it with, or is that part of a different subject here?
Ms. Miles Wilson.
Mr. Chair, so pertaining to what was directed to be discussed here at this meeting, it was related to rural roads. So I just wanted to clarify, are you referring to rural roads in particular or just a broad question?
Roads, but this is more of a broad question because I have actually got a meeting with MOTI next week to discuss some of the roads in my area. But this is more of a broad spectrum thing, such as the infrastructure, the roads. What can you, that you're downloading onto us, give us at least some resources to do it with? Is that part, or is this specifically for roads at the moment?
Okay, so just to hopefully I understand what you're asking, and that the advocacy done at UBCM to the Minister of Transportation, and now what their staff are referring to is that there's kind of concerns regarding the level of service they're providing on their roads. And so they've indicated there is an opportunity if you see on the ground that things are not being managed or that there's concerns, particularly regarding speed is what he was, the district manager was referring to. They could assign an engineer to take a look at those key areas, but the feedback or the direction is basically to be strategic. Don't give a long laundry list, but give a list of a couple of different areas that you're concerned about. Make a formal request and they can take a look.
Okay.
Just a comment, and I appreciate where Director Wilson's going with this, and that is a broader sort of global question around downloading and the likes, but I think where I hear Ms. Miles Wilson going on this, and this comes from sort of years of trying to deal with MOTI, is if we approach them with we want to see all village centers reduced from 50K to 40K or 30K, they probably won't even look at that. But if we as a group were to come up with, say, Cowichan Bay and another area, 2 specific sites, we were to write a letter, send a resolution through the board, then they may assign an engineer to look at 2 specific sites, but aren't really interested in looking at a sort of a global, bigger picture of reducing speeds in all of our village centers. Does that sound about right?
Pretty much, yeah. And thanks, sorry, I'm not really concerned about speeds, to be quite honest, except in the village cores, of course. I'm more concerned of great big lumps of road missing where they shouldn't be missing.
Well, Mr. Chair, you can put what you wish in your letter and indicate those key concern areas. I guess what the offer was from the district office is it was pertaining to speed, and that ties back to the resolution. They wrote it right in there. The other resolution was a little bit more, less committal, let's say.
Okay, I've got a bit of a speakers list going here. I'll go to Director Acton first. Got a speakers list, Director Acton, you're first.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. CAO, Madam CAO. I guess, so thanks for calling the ministry, but I think their pitch is really just brushing you off. They have done that in the past already. So, for example, if we're going to go to the minister, I would like Shawnigan Lake to be on the list of areas that need the speed limit decreased, and this is where it has begun. We had economic development involved with meeting with the community and the businesses and our design charrette. That all supports a lower speed limit, and the ministry has come, and what they will do is test it, and they'll say, no, people are not speeding, they are going the speed limit. And so there's the problem right there. The community feels the speed limit is too high. They don't feel safe. So what we're asking at UBCM is to have a different toolbox for MOTI. And we have also asked MOTI in the past to do a bit of a test project, beta testing, whatever you'd want to call it, in Shawnigan Lake, where they could try a few different tactics for lowering the speed, etc. So I think they're just brushing you off by giving you that offer.
Ms. Miles Wilson.
Well, I don't like getting brushed off, but to expand on that, to the director through the chair, you need to build a little bit of momentum and a bit of a case if you do decide to submit a formal request. And that means getting a letter from the RCMP, for instance, community groups, user groups, school district, making sure that you've kind of done a little bit of groundwork to build the case. And that could be appended to a letter. And so I do recognize, I worked for the province for long enough to know how it works, and I think that would be a good strategy, is to do a little bit of consultation with key groups and use that information to make your case.
Follow-up, please.
Go ahead.
So would you like those letters ASAP, or how do we proceed?
That's what we're in the midst of discussing as to how to proceed and what might be the path forward. So hold that thought for a moment, and I'll go to Director Deck next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the RCMP in Lake Cowichan are working with potential speed watch volunteers throughout Area I. So they recognize that Area I is experiencing challenges regarding speeding. And they've actually extended their offer to communities outside of Area I. Obviously, I think this is an issue for all of us, but that just says to me that they are aware that everyone has these issues, so everyone is a priority. I just think that lowering the speed limits just allows people to ignore those signs and go 10 or 15 miles per hour faster than the speed limit allows. I think the enforcement is the issue, and that's where Speed Watch can help, because the police just can't enforce a huge area like the CVRD. So I just think we have to amplify the need for more Speed Watch and make it more difficult for people to speed. But the RCMP are behind it, the ICBC is behind it with Speed Watch program. So in terms of that, I just think we have to advocate for that as much as we can.
Thank you, Director Martman.
Well, just to reaffirm, I think I'm on the same page as Director Acton in that this is a standard approach that I've found with them with Area H. They'll look at, take your concerns, and very responsive. Bring an engineer or look at the speed limits, do the assessment, get the engineers to look at it, and it fits within their parameters. So it's about changing those parameters that really I think we're facing. To Director Wilson though, if he has lumps, I've got holes. So send them over to me somewhere we can find them. And I guess so. Perhaps it is about the tools that we want to bring forward in this conversation, and I think that's maybe we can focus on those.
Thank you, Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Ms. Miles-Whiston. Did I hear that we should be preparing for, in May, a presentation from the district manager, and that would deal with lumps and holes? And do you want a litany of things that are wrong in our own areas?
Ms. Miles-Wilson.
So I think the ministry is very used to having challenging discussions when they come to council and board meetings all over the province. So the district manager and the operations manager have agreed to come, and they're wanting to come. This is part of their regular course of business. And to explain what the capital plans and the maintenance plans are for the year ahead. So I think probably a good opportunity would be to potentially follow up with them. There's, you got 9 different areas here. So follow up with them afterwards and give them specifics. They may already know, but you may be able to highlight for them things you're seeing on the ground. But I think, it might be challenging to get all that feedback from 9 different areas in that short time frame.
Director Nicholson.
Hi, well, I concur with pretty much everything that's been said. And I think that from my perspective, having made very little headway on this topic for 8 years or 9 years, that working relationships is I think one of the most important parts of this. I think we need to have a candid discussion with them about how we can improve how we work together, because it doesn't seem to cross their mind to communicate very often, at least on the general maintenance stuff. I have had a good experience with people who are planning large culvert bridge replacements 2 years in advance. They've called me 2 years in advance, which is great. But just the day-to-day things never seem to, like, I never, ever, no one ever picks up the phone to call me to tell me when Allenby Road might be, or what progress we've made on the Allenby Road slide, and if it is ever going to open. And so I feel like I'm constantly hounding them, and the relationship doesn't seem to, it would be nice if we could figure out a way of having regular kind of communication things instead of, And I don't think it helps much to have individual directors chasing ops managers. We're sort of competing with one another for a time, and I have to deal with 2 ops managers because the divide is down the middle of Area E, and it just, the whole thing to me doesn't work very well. And yeah, so that would be what I would like to talk to them about.
So just in an attempt to close the loop here, I think they've got us exactly where they want us. They just have to come and take flack from us once a year, and the rest of the time it's no. And they will send skilled people who will stand there and present their plan for the year and tell us how many millions of dollars will be spent in this area or not. I seem to recall that this isn't our year to get money spent here, but this is sort of back to what Director Wilson said, is it the global fight or is it the down to the specific neighborhood fight? And the only direction that I see us having any success is sort of what was Ms. Miles Wilson had started with, is if we have some site-specific issues around speeding, then we should target that and go to the ministry and have a meeting, maybe in Victoria, and close the loop on that. That was the intent of the resolution that was sent forward through AVICC and UBCM. I think that's a path forward. I don't hold a lot of hope out when they send their delegation of people to stand up there and tell us all the great things that they're going to do, and yet we still have all the issues in our communities, and we've had them for as long as I've been here. So I guess the question would be, are there any communities that have specific, we've heard from Shawnigan, and there's a desire, and it sounds like there's some studies and some background gone into the speed in the village core in Shawnigan. Are there other areas that have done a little bit of work, have had a lot of feedback that are wanting? So I'll go to Director Abbott first and then Director Deck.
I'd like to add emphasis to what Director Nicholson mentioned, and that's opening up Allenby somehow, some way. The impact on the Trans-Canada Highway during the busy summer months or holiday seasons is unbelievable. So much traffic that could be diverted from the TCH could be on these back roads, but they can't get through. I have the privilege of breaking the law and riding Allenby on board days, and there's a lot of leaves on that road. It needs to be cleaned up for us cyclists.
Director Deck?
Okay, yes, thank you, Chair. The MOTI put what are called black boxes on some areas, I think 2 they put in, or just 1 in Yubo. And that takes a snapshot of traffic, the size of vehicles, the speed they're going. They did it for a week, but that's just a snapshot. And if it's a quiet day, you know, the logging trucks are staying home for the weekend or whatever, or the weather doesn't cooperate with logging, then, you know, it's quiet. But there are ways of capturing information about how much speeding is actually going on. So we've done that, but that's only a week, and that's a couple of years ago now, or a year and a half ago. So, like, I don't want to fight for my residents' right to a safe walk down our roads with someone else who has the exact same issues. So as far as I'm concerned, safety is a priority for all of our areas, not just Mead Creek Road, Yubo Road, and Marble Bay Road. No, it's all of us. So I don't know what has to be done about it, but I don't want to have to fight for safer roads with other area directors. Thank you.
Ms. Miles Wilson, what do you suggest we do from here?
Well, Mr. Chair, the proposal, just for consideration, was to make a formal request to have the ministry take a look at areas of concern. Tying back to that resolution, there was a broad perspective that there were speed issues in certain areas. The ministry has said they do have a process. It would be a formal request to prioritize and be specific about the areas you'd like them to focus on. It doesn't mean they stop there. It means that workload, capacity, and the rest of it, budget, it doesn't mean you can't come back to them next year and say, we want you to take a look at another 2. So it just means if you do have a few, I've heard Sean again here today, if there are others, if you could consider providing a direction to staff to start crafting a letter at the committee's discretion.
Director Nicholson?
Well, I just, from the perspective of Area E, Miller Road is hugely impacted by the Allenby Road slide. And actually, there are a lot of impacts, but from a level of traffic and speeding, I think Miller Road has been, but it's almost like it would be nice to understand what the long-term plan is, because maybe there's some things that should be put in place around Miller Road that if it's not gonna, if Allenby Road is gonna remain closed, otherwise, if it's gonna be, another 6 months, then you might not go down that road. So really, I think we need more information on that particular issue, but it is a big issue.
Go ahead, Ms. Miles-Wilson. I see Director Acton's hand up.
So, and the director may have recall this information, but the ministry was queried about Allenby was that the capital budget was not the problem. It was regarding works needed to happen for geotechnical works on adjacent lands. And so that could be something when they come in May that you could ask them for an update on. But as far as I understand in the last conversation, money wasn't the problem. It was lands, work that needed to happen on lands.
Director Acton.
Thank you. I agree with Director Deck in the sense of looking at this as an issue that we all have, but it's more like that the villages have. It's having that, we all have, or many of us have small areas where we have shops, and it's a different kind of use than what it's built for, just 80-kilometer rural highway. So I think highlighting those, we have Cobble Hill, Shawnigan Lake, Cowichan Bay, and and then add some other areas, but focusing on those village centers. I'm not I think I still think that it's about changing the toolbox, because they will come here or even I've been told right to my face, that's not something we do. And even Cowichan Bay put it in their own hands and put up their own 30-kilometer sign. So I don't see us going year after year asking for this as useful until we can ask the minister to give his staff or her staff more tools to work with, because they're not decision makers. They just say, too bad, so sad.
So, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Miles-Wilson.
Yeah, and so I guess regarding speed reduction, if you're talking about like traffic calming measures and other things that you'd be looking at, I know some of you have talked a bit about speed boards as being effective in certain areas, that type of thing. So I'm not sure, Director Acton, what you would be, regarding the tools in the toolbox, other things that you'd be looking to ask for support on from the ministry, or if the district office would be a good avenue to start. But if there was any further details you'd have on that, it might be helpful. Just to kind of,
okay.
yeah.
So, for example, they won't go lower than 50 kilometers an hour unless there's an elementary school. That's the exception. So, and then The speed reader board is only in certain areas where it can be followed up with a sign and the speed watch. So that's a poor tool. And then any kind of, they also don't, refuse to do speed bumps, or they just don't have any of those items available to them. And they'll have every excuse why they can't have them. And speed bumps will say, well, the snowplow is going to remove them. Well, other areas have speed bumps, have snow plows, but they're just operating under a different set of rules and very limited abilities. So I guess it's just asking, or even where the road kind of curves in and you create a narrowing of the road. That's a speed calming tool as well, and they won't do that either. So I think it's going to the top and asking for, maybe not coming, just asking for more ways to solve those issues.
So I'm getting a sense that we all have similar issues around, I know traffic calming and the likes, and I've heard exactly the same thing that Director Acton has had. We can't do traffic calming, we can't do this, we can't do that. And it gets a little old. And it's true that the people that we deal with on a regular basis say their hands are tied, and they, the idea that we would approach the ministry to have a general reduction in speed signs in rural areas, or its speed limits in rural areas, I just want to make sure that we're using our energy and our CAO's energy for something that is actually achievable. I think if you go through the history of UBCM resolutions around speed limits in rural areas, there's probably as long as my arm, and the answer has always been no. So my question to the committee is, do we want to try something targeted and specific around, and perhaps a meeting with the minister, around getting help to have different tools available to us in electoral areas, but in developed village centers? Is that something that we want to do? Because a general, we want to see speeds reduced in all our electoral area village areas is not going to get any traction. That's just my 15 years of experience. But if we go in with something targeted, I would suggest Shawnigan Lake is an excellent example of where we have a developed rural area that needs some help with safety and speed in its areas. That might be a perfect example to go in and use that with the ministry, or perhaps a meeting with the minister, to say that we need some of these tools and the parameters changed in electoral areas. So that's my thinking as far as where we direct our energy. Director Acton, then Director Abbott.
Yeah, I think you summarized that really well, and I think that might be useful. I wouldn't be completely optimistic that something's going to change quickly, but I think the ministry needs to keep hearing it, and I think that would be a good approach.
Director Abbott.
Concurred completely that let's get a success under our belt. Given your 15 years of experience and your prognosis on the shotgun approach, I think if we get let's put all of the emphasis on a very rapidly growing area. Yes, I'd love to see it in Cowichan Bay, but we're going to dilute. So good suggestion.
So how about a resolution along the lines of that we recommend to the board that we arrange a meeting with the Minister or Ministry of Transportation to be attended by the CAO and Electoral Area Director and perhaps EASC Chair to discuss speed limit parameters in Shawnigan Lake? Or words to that effect. You're moving that? Yeah. Is there a seconder? Seconders all around the room. Anything to add, Ms. Miles Wilson?
I just wanted to clarify that a letter requesting a meeting with the minister on the one issue will likely get punted to the district office in based on my years of experience. But there is a formal process at the district level. I think what a good strategy might be is to do both. Let the minister know your concern in a letter, and let him know that you're engaged, or let them know that you're engaging with the district office and that you're going to be probably bringing it to UBCM in September just to follow up, something to that effect. But that's just my suggestion.
You get way more attention when it's coming downhill from the minister, so I think write the minister and CC the district office, and they'll know that we're coming. So we've had it moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Oh, you're opposed, Director Deck? Motion carries. Anything further?
I know, just for the sake of being concise, I think I just wanted to flag for you that the board direction was two-part, and that we will also be following up on this discussion at Committee of the Whole next week about the broader advocacy issues, but I won't bother going into that here today. But just to know that this will kind of flow through to the next meeting, and we'll carry on with that discussion.
Excellent. With that, that brings us to R4, which we will contemplate in about 12 minutes. Everybody return here at 2:50, and Ms. Churlf, you'll be up then. Ms. Churlf, welcome, R4.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Just one second. Is that sharing in the WebEx platform? No. No, okay. Just one second. I got instructions on this, and clearly I didn't pay attention clearly enough.
Well, you might have.
Okay, I think this is the right one. How's that now? Good? Okay. Okay, it looks different on the screen that I'm on. I'll get started. Okay, so I'd like to provide you a report today on the Land Use Services Department, including, I have an outline here, how we're organized and our division responsibilities. And then I'd like to talk about some of the accomplishments over the past year in 2023, and talk about the 2024 work plan. And then specifically to have some discussion around the coordination of two major projects, the OCP and comprehensive zoning bylaw. So this is in the presentation, and this PowerPoint will actually be appended to the agenda for the reference of others who want to look at it at a later date. It's a little bit small, but it shows you that we're organized into four major divisions, obviously: strategic initiatives, community planning, development services, and inspections and enforcement. Inspections and enforcement has two sub-areas, of course being building inspection and bylaw enforcement. Coming out of the bylaw enforcement service review, last year a manager was hired to oversee the bylaw enforcement section and help advance recommendations of the bylaw enforcement service review. So this sort of gives you a sort of an outline of what each of the divisions is responsible for. So strategic initiatives, starting at the kind of the highest sort of policy levels, looking really at a regional, sub-regional planning level, focused on official community plan, development of local area plans, development permit area designations, micro policy projects, and an example of that would be the telecommunications antenna siting policy. They're responsible for the regional housing needs assessment and updates to electoral area housing needs assessments.
Regional growth strategy referrals, so for our neighboring regional districts that have an RGS and want to amend, they'll send us referrals, and so that division will provide a response for your consideration at committee. And then lastly, regional planning initiatives, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later in my presentation. Community planning is similarly focused on planning as opposed to development, but at a sort of a more of an implementation level. So through the development of zoning bylaws and land use bylaws to implement the policies that are set out in official community plans and local area plans. They're tasked with the development of the comprehensive zoning bylaw, which will be a consolidation of the electoral area zoning bylaws. They will respond to local government referrals, anything with respect to OCP or zoning bylaw amendments. The Community Heritage Register, this probably hasn't come forward recently, but the CBRD does have a Community Heritage Register for recognition of significant heritage resources within electoral areas, and this division is responsible for that. And then they also provide a lot of support to our Development Services division, on particularly on major applications. Development Service, moving along the line, then Development Services primarily focuses on processing development applications, responding to referrals from the province with respect to subdivision, water licenses, applications that have to go through the Agricultural Land Commission. They also respond internally to building permit referrals. So when somebody makes a building permit application, they're confirming that the building permit doesn't actually first require a development permit, or that the building permit is complying with zoning. They're providing support to advisory planning commissions and the Board of Variance when those groups are looking at development applications. And then a big part of the division's work is also focused on just providing information to the public and responding to general planning and development inquiries. On the inspections and enforcement end, it's fairly straightforward. Building inspection is providing inspection services, so they're reviewing building permit applications and ensuring compliance with the BC Building Code and plumbing codes. Undertaking routine inspections. They do also support bylaw enforcement. So building inspectors are designated as bylaw officers, so they'll provide support in relation to bylaw infractions that are generally related to building inspection, or infractions with respect to buildings. And then on the enforcement side, obviously enforcement of regulatory bylaws applicable to electoral areas. And that includes the zoning bylaw, the soil deposit bylaw, and then any noise or nuisance bylaws that are in effect. They'll be tasked with administering the bylaw dispute adjudication system once that's up and running. And they're also focused on continually trying to update policies and bylaws for this group's consideration. And they're also responsible for administering the animal control contract. So CBRD has animal control as a service, but that's contracted out to a third party. So thinking about what's happened over the last little while, there's actually, when I was putting this presentation together and soliciting input from the managers, it was quite a delightful surprise, actually, to see all the things that have been accomplished by the divisions. So this is a list of what's gone on in strategic initiatives, 9 ideas fairs last February, 16 community meetings in the fall on local area plan visioning, completion of a regional agriculture report and a community meeting on agriculture in the fall of 2023. There was a major update to development permit areas, and if you recall, development permit guidelines and exemptions were moved into their own separate zoning bylaw. And there's been significant engagement with First Nations and APCs in relation to the division's work. Community planning,
has been, like I said, focused on zoning bylaw amendments. There have been a number of amendments to support increased opportunities for suites, particularly in the southern electoral areas. Groups initiated the comprehensive zoning bylaw. They've been tasked with updating development permit guidelines and exemptions. There was a specific direction from the board to look at the riparian areas protection regulation, DPA, and so there'll be more coming back to you on that particular project. A rezoning of the Missachi Fire Hall, I had to throw that in. Again, it's community planning, but this was a sort of a development-related project. Significant support for a public meeting in Electoral Area H on a major rezoning file that you'll all recall, and orientation to APCs. Development services has processed almost 190 applications last year. We issued 60 development permits, so that's 60 staff reports that didn't come to the Electoral Area Services Committee, but they did come to the general manager for consideration. There was an updated development procedures bylaw, and delegation of minor variances and updated fees. We actually haven't seen any delegated development variance permit applications yet, but we'll let you know how that goes when we do get them. Development services has been focused on, the report goes into detail on this, but the development services modernization project, and there have been a number of accomplishments to support that project, and significantly with respect to internal processes and procedures, and recently the acquisition of land management software. So Michelle and her team are really focused on trying to implement that software now, which will affect broadly not only development services, but the other divisions in land use services. They hosted an electoral area directors workshop on public meetings and hearings, and also updated the APC handbook. And inspections and enforcement processed 341 building applications, updated the CBRD building bylaw, updated the fireworks bylaw, updated the ticketing bylaw, because of course the ticketing bylaw has to get updated every time there's a change to the building bylaw or the zoning bylaw, or a zoning bylaw. Completed the bylaw service review, as I noted, and made a number of enhancements to the CBRD website. So now looking forward in terms of 2024 and beyond, strategic initiatives very much focused on, again, OCP modernization and development of the local area plans. They're also tasked with complete community assessments, which I think Corley and Allison will provide a report to you on at an upcoming meeting. Under Bill 44, we are responsible for updating the OCP and housing needs assessment. These are now looking at a 20-year time horizon as opposed to a 5-year time horizon. Unfortunately, the province hasn't provided the methodology for doing that work yet, so that is one of the major reasons why the OCP adoption process has been delayed. So once that methodology has been received, strategic initiatives will be able to complete the updates to the draft OCP and the housing needs assessment so that their work can continue. Island Rail Corridor visioning is underway. So this is actually a regional focus project, which involves all the local First Nations who lands that intersect with the Island Rail Corridor. And I believe that project is just started, just up and running, and again, it'll be one that you will hear more about in the coming weeks. And the CBRD's reconciliation framework, so strategic initiatives staff are supporting Clayton and Strategic Services on the development of a corporate reconciliation framework. Community planning primarily is focused right now on the Bill 44 requirements, including updates to zoning to accommodate secondary suites per the legislation. Short-term rentals, there's been a great deal of discussion about that recently. And implementation of temporary use permits to support the option for lawful short-term rentals in areas where they aren't currently permitted. DPA guidelines, as I noted, that work is underway. Development of the comprehensive zoning bylaw. The community amenity contribution policy, so the CBRD doesn't currently have an established community amenity contribution policy. There's been quite a bit of work that's happened on that through the Strategic Initiatives Division, and that work has now been transferred to community planning because it's somewhat related to the potential for amenity contribution and DCC or development cost charge bylaws, which could occur under or in conjunction with the funding that we have through Bill 44. And staff will report more on that at a coming meeting. Development services, as I noted, very much focused on the land management system implementation, changes to the development of approval information bylaw, which you've seen already. Looking at an update to the development referrals policy specific to ALC applications and referrals to First Nations. Working kind of in conjunction with community planning on the development of temporary use permits and guidelines, and just generally continuing to update policies, procedures, and bylaws to support development services modernization. And inspections and enforcement. They're currently involved with, BC government has a building permit application portal pilot project, so our building team's involved with that. Implementation of the step code, both energy step code and the zero carbon step code. They're two different things. When we get to that stage in the land management system implementation, they'll be working on implementation of the building inspection module component of that system, and also digital plan review. So really focusing from paper plan review to digital plan review, which of course will come with some different technology and hardware, both hardware and software needs. On the bylaw side, bylaw is very much focused on implementation of the BDAS, or the Bylaw Dispute Adjudication System. Short-term rental enforcement is directed by the board. The potential for business licensing to support short-term rentals and bed and breakfasts. The bylaw enforcement policy that will be coming to you shortly with ideally some recommendations around some key issues of concerns like RVs and tiny homes, so very much topical. General bylaw review. They also, I should note, will review zoning bylaw amendments that might be drafted by either development services or community planning because they want to make sure they're enforceable. Yeah, and then also so a bylaw enforcement module through the land management system and an animal control. Animal control module sounds terrible. It's a dog licensing module. Okay, so I really wanted to focus on the coordination of the MOCP and the comprehensive zoning bylaw today. More for you to kind of think about. We could have a general discussion, but really want you to think about this, and had anticipated that on April 17th, staff would come back both from strategic initiatives and community planning to talk more specifically about the MOCP LAP process and also the comprehensive zoning bylaw process. So in advance of that, I kind of want to prep you a little bit because there's a lot of thought that has to go into how these projects work together. And so the goal here is that we're taking a harmonized OCP with 9 local area plans, which generally follow the electoral area boundaries, transitioning that into a modernized OCP, which reflects current community values and the community's vision for, I guess it's 20 years now at least, along with 9 local area plans, which no longer follow electoral area boundaries, but really follow growth containment boundaries. And in some cases, they overlap electoral area boundaries, so that's quite interesting. And the based on you know, the delays that we've been faced with somewhat from the province, the anticipated adoption is early 2025. Actually, correct me, it's late 2025 for everything, Q4, with the comprehensive zoning bylaw to follow for adoption earlier in 2026. And so that last piece it's really critical, but we can't adopt a comprehensive zoning bylaw that implements the OCP, the new MOCP, until the MOCP is adopted.
Mr. Chair, may I just go back to the other slide? The MOCP would be adopted in Q1 2025 without the LAPs.
Okay. MOCP adoption in Q1 2025 without the LAPs, and then LAP adoption by Q4 2025. That's the target. Thank you, Allison. Okay, so this slide shows how the processes are supposed to dovetail, and you'll see that what we've proposed is that they're moving alongside, but really what you're seeing at the current time is mostly focused on the MOCP and less so on the comprehensive zoning bylaw. And there are some reasons for that. And I wanted to show the IAP2 spectrum of public consultation, or public participation rather, because it impacts how we think about how these projects are delivered and the level of consultation or participation that occurs in the community. And at the MOCP LAP level, we're very much focused on involving the community and collaborating with the community on the development of the policy and really setting kind of the bar for what the community wants to see in terms of future growth and development. The comprehensive zoning bylaw still requires public input and participation, but because it's implementing the direction of the modernized OCP and local area plans, it's much more of a on the inform and consult end of the public participation spectrum, and that's how we envision it. But that's how these projects have been sort of planned and are planned to proceed. So when we think about how they work together, it kind of had two sort of feasible options, and one is a coordinated process, which is what we've been working towards, and it's like a Peloton. And just for the information of anybody who's concerned, this photo is in the Creative Commons, so there's no copyright violations. But think about Peloton and how that works is that you actually have teams. Teams are competing. So if we're working as a team, we're working as a team, but we're working as a team to promote the rider in the lead, and that is the OCP. So we want the OCP to be the lead. And we're going to work in the background to support the OCP. So there's a lot of background work happening on the comprehensive zoning bylaw right now that really hasn't, been in the public domain, but there is work happening in the background. So we see, once the MOCP is in place, that we could complete that comprehensive zoning bylaw by Q1 2026. So not that long after the OCP is adopted. As I noted, that's anticipating public engagement at the inform consult versus the involve collaborate level, and sort of the risk is that if we kind of get this comprehensive zoning bylaw out too far in advance of the OCP, or kind of give it too much attention, is that the focus of the public starts to shift to that, as opposed to really focusing on trying to finish and refine the policy documents. So and a really nice photo that went with this one that's not showing up. Let me see. Nope. it's gone. My photo's gone. Okay, well, my photo. The credit is there, yeah. I had a photo of some kids in a relay. So thinking about how you would implement the MOCP through the comprehensive zoning bylaw with a project that really follows after the end of the OCP. It's like a relay. It's like, you know, the baton is passed, and once the MOCP is done and adopted, then you go out to the public with a comprehensive zoning bylaw process. And the risk with that is that, you know, you're really starting to kind of delay the process of getting a zoning bylaw adopted. In some ways, it's good, it's logical, it follows that the policy is implemented through the zoning, but you know, there is the risk of the public getting lost, losing patience just because it's been a very long process. On the other hand, if that's the desire, then, you know, staff can focus on all of the other work that needs to get done. And there, as you could see, there's quite a lot of work that needs to get done. So those are the two kind of the approaches. The report that you were going to get on March the 6th was going to talk about the coordinated process, but you'll get that report later. And so in advance of that, you can think about how these two projects dovetail together and what your expectations are around the level of public participation that you want. Because our staff have done a very great job on the MOCP and the local area plans of setting a really, really high bar for public participation, and work really, really hard on that. You know, but there's a lot of resources that go into that level. And so if the expectation or the interest is to achieve that same sort of level, then we need to think about that, and we need to budget for that. So just keep that in mind. And really that's, I think, all I have to say, but I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, so I will stay here.
Thank you, Mr. Rolfe. Wow, that was a hand went up fast.
Yeah.
Director Abbott.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Charles. Wonderful report. But might I appeal your indulgence that when using analogies to help Director Martman, you use tractors instead of bicycle teams? I did have a corollary to that, if I may, in all seriousness. We've heard.
It's a bit frozen. I'm just trying to get it to stop. No, it's frozen. It's frozen. We're sorry.
She didn't even hear my query.
No, I heard you. It was about tractors. I want to talk about track and field.
Squeeze, lift, put down. No. In all seriousness, we've heard from the public through Ms. Kaufman that the protracted methodology. Do we need to see the screen?
Yeah, maybe before you
Well,
jump in.
We're still in sharing, but we can't.
Yeah, before you jump in and we go to questions. So this has been an exhaustive report, and it's a for information report. So I don't think there's any expectation of us coming out of today with any resolutions or directions as far as which path to go or the other, but I think that make inquiries and get the information that you need, and there might be a further discussion as to the options that were presented towards the end of Mr. Rolfe's report, and we can contemplate further. I know this has been a lot of information to digest, not only over the weekend, but with just what's been presented today. So, and look at that, we're back. So with that, Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. Just wondered, Ms. Charles, in anticipation of the public's fatigue, your team have been doing an amazing job. Can you sustain this through till 26?
Planners are very resilient people, so, and as are building officials and bylaw officers, yes. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, and so I think if you got into the report and if you looked at the detailed sort of work plans that were attached to the back of the report, you can see there's a lot there. We are following the board's direction, right? And so we will do as much as we can, and we'll tell you when we're completely maxed out, or if something else has to be prioritized per the board's direction, then something else can come off the table.
If I may, Chair, I'm also concerned about public engagement, whether it's going to wane.
I'm not sure how to answer
That was a very open-ended question.
I guess we want to see this as practicable as possible, moving along as quickly as possible, so that we keep that level of interest at the public level.
Thank you, Director Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ryan. Couple of things here. Community Heritage Register, something I didn't know about before. And I actually found it on the CVRD website. And there's some good stuff here. The shearing tree, is that still around? But there's all sorts of things here. A lot of this, which is listed in Area C, is it still part of a heritage preservation type thing, or would I have to ask somebody else about that? There's some really good things here. One of them is very rude, actually, but...
Ms. Charles, do you want to go there?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So at some point in the future, when staff have a bit of time, we could bring back a report on the Community Heritage Register, just for information. I think that would be helpful. And yes, I believe the shearing tree is still in place. And if I recall, there was a covenant that was in place to protect it.
Great.
So,
good stuff. No, I'll keep an eye on that one. And follow up, please, Mr. Chair. Digital plan review software, is that separate to the LMS?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the last one is just an observation more than anything, where you've said that the public may lose patience or interest due to protected timeline. I think we've heard that from Ms. Kaufman as well. My main concern here as well is that I have a very, very involved chair and vice chair of the APC. And I think even they're reaching their limit as well. So no, that's not meant as a criticism by any means, but we are in danger of losing those people as well.
Yeah, and through you, Chair, I think, I mean, our advisory planning commissions have done a fabulous job of providing input to the development of the consolidation or the harmonization of the OCPs and now the modernization and the development of local area plans. So, we can't thank them enough for their time, which is, completely voluntary, right? And having that, sort of innate community knowledge that, we don't necessarily have at the staff level. It's fabulous and it's invaluable. But yes, there is the risk of fatigue, right? And so we want to be mindful of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I've got Director Segal and Director Acton's next.
Thank you. Okay, so my question, the comprehensive zoning bylaw, that's being made based off the draft MOCP, or is it being developed on the HOCP?
So, through you, Chair, to Director Segal. So, we can adopt a zoning bylaw that is not consistent with the OCP that is in place, that's in effect. So any zoning bylaw amendments that you see come forward have to be consistent with the harmonized OCP. That doesn't mean that we can't develop zoning bylaws or draft zoning bylaws that are intended to implement the MOCP. What staff have been working towards is a bit of a phased approach to achieving the comprehensive zoning bylaw that implements the MOCP, just because of the timeline. But there's a lot of opportunity to work on, and in some cases there really won't be any difference between what's in the HOCP and what's in the MOCP, and I think specifically about, general regulations regarding home-based businesses or backyard chickens, right? It's like some of that
work can happen now. Where we get into challenges is around zoning that's related to densities, particularly in residential areas or multi-unit residential areas where the MOCP might have a lower density than the HOCP, and so you can adopt a zoning bylaw.
Yeah, right.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
Follow up?
So, yeah, I heard what the chair said, that this is for just information, but I do feel like you kind of offered two options of like how to move forward, but it feels very operational. I love the idea of pairing the public engagement with the LAPs and the comprehensive zoning bylaw, just because from my experience of I was on the APC when this first started, and you know, all the OCP outreach and we had an LAP for area A, B, and C. All the public's questions are always, that's in the zoning bylaw. That's in the zoning bylaw. So it's interesting you talk about, you know, the public focus will shift, but I kind of feel like the public never got away from the zoning bylaw, like that, or that's just where their brains is centered at, or maybe where my brain and what I notice is just all like, when do we get to the nuts and bolts? You know, those are my questions. So I felt when I went to the area A, B, and C LAP meeting, it was kind of like, there was this general like, oh, again, it's not time for that question yet. So I think pairing those two public consultation pieces, I think could be really beneficial to the public, because for the rest of D to I, I'm like, yay, this is, yes, what I've been wanting to ask about and get clarity on, as well as you're getting information for the LEPs. Yeah, I feel like there was something else I was going to say, but again, I'm a little confused with it, you know, we're not giving direction, but there kind of was in the presentation, so looking for more input from the chair.
Go ahead, Ann.
Through you, Chair. I mean, certainly, you can provide input at any time, and you know, I had hoped that there would be discussion about this, and like I said, there will be reports coming back, so you'll have some time to think about it and how that happens. The one thing I will say is that, you know, there actually was a third option that I didn't include in my presentation, and that was a completely integrated, modernized OCP, LAP, comprehensive zoning bylaw process, which would require us to go back and actually, you know, renegotiate contracts around how the work is being delivered, because right now, it's, you know, on the MOCP LAP side, there's a lot of commitment of consulting resources, and so that doesn't engage the zoning component, right? And so if you're wanting to see a completely integrated process, then we're looking at a bit of an overhaul of the work plans and the budgets just to meet that particular need. So again, it's something that we can think about and perhaps be more prepared to respond to when those reports come forward.
And just before I go to Director Acton, I think this is a sort of an extended setting of the table. This is, I think, a multi-course meal that we're about to sit down to, and we've just been handed the menu. So I've got some ideas around perhaps expedited MOCP completion and that sort of thing, but I think that it's important that we can hear from one another as to, you know, our general feelings around this, and an additional discussion about, you know, what if we were to do this, or that third option might be appropriate, but additional resources. And I understand that even to get the GIS and mapping resources to do a lot of this work is a challenge, even if you go out with cash to acquire it. So I think it's preferred that we, you know, go into a contemplative mode at this point and take in all of this information and hear what each of us is feeling around, you know, what direction we go next. So I've got Director Acton next, and I'll go to Director Nicholson and myself. Director Acton.
Thank you, Chair. If we're talking about a consolidated approach, I would love to see that, and I've heard the word fatigue. I've witnessed the community is fatigued. The LAP attendance was quite low, and these are really expensive processes, and we're not getting the amount of people out that we should be getting when we spend that kind of money. It's been several years, but at the end of it, I don't even know how many years it's gonna be, 6 or 7 years for a process that was supposed to be saving us time. So it doesn't feel like that's, if we just keep pulling it out and pulling it out, like, I think the community is really confused. There's been too many steps brought into the conversation, and definitely fatigue is happening and already happening. And then seeing this work plan, it's going to peter out. And I think we need to get to the end and then present that as a consolidated piece and make any final tweaks at that point.
Thank you, Director Nicholson.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for the report, Ann. Yeah, I concur with Director Acton on the community Area E. It's been 10 years actually for Area E, and we have a harmonized OCP, but we're no farther ahead than we were 10 years ago. We've fixed a couple of regulations on the fly, but really 10 years later, we're still where we were. So I'm very concerned, and I'm just trying to figure out what the best way forward is to try and fast track some of this. And so I've got some questions. Starting with the housing needs assessment. So I get that that's holding up the MOCP. What I'm wondering is how much impact do you expect it to have on the MOCP related to, based on what the work we've already done?
I'm going to let Corley respond to that. She's going to run up to the podium.
Wow.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So the housing needs assessment, the interim one, which will start in July, must project out 20 years. Right now, the MOCP, the draft MOCP, is projecting out to 2032, so it'll be adding 12 years. We anticipate not a lot of significant changes to the growth containment boundaries because we have capacity beyond 2032 already in the growth containment boundaries. It will impact the policies in Schedule A and the land use designations because we are now required by the province to have a specific policy on each housing type that is within the housing needs assessment. But the shorter answer is we're anticipating that, and we are required to complete all of that work by December of 2024. And we're anticipating that Schedule A will be, and the mapping schedules will all be completed by December of this year.
Okay, can I carry on? So my second question is, there's an option of getting the MOCP improved, right, in place without the local area plans. So could we not get the comprehensive zoning bylaw on this MOCP without the local area plans kind of done too? Like fast track it to?
That is possible, yes.
So we wouldn't necessarily need to wait till all the local area plans are done to do a comprehensive zoning bylaw?
So the comprehensive zoning bylaw, like I said, has to implement the OCP that's in place. If the MOCP is adopted, the zoning bylaw the new zoning bylaw could literally be adopted.
So presumably,
at the same meeting.
So if we did a more integrated process, that could happen, if we chose that option. Okay. There are some things that I feel that were pushed off to the MOCP. I mean, I know through the process, this harmonization process, things like the sign bylaw review. Okay, we'll take care of that in the MOCP. You know, that was sort of the standard line all the time. And so now we've got a list of things that haven't been started that we have to do. And I'm kind of concerned that work we haven't gotten going on that work. And I'm wondering how important it is to actually get going in the comprehensive zoning bylaw scheme of things. Maybe maybe we should have more of a discussion around priorities or so forth on that kind of thing. And then my other point is around the APC. So my APC is not met yet this term. And so talk about people that have had enough, or then they're sort of dropped. And, you know, I feel like we rely on, at least I rely on the community input a lot, and it feels like we need to develop sort of a plan of making good use of our APC so that they feel valued and used, and yeah, not just sort of when we got a project, then we pull them in and then we drop them for whatever. And so I think we need to think a little bit more about community engagement and in getting the most value for the least cost. Because I think it is really important. And I would agree completely with Director Segal. I mean, they don't think about policies, they think about regulations. So it's like you need to have a conversation that's got them both there, and then the planners, the professionals can tease them apart. That's it.
Chair, I believe that there is a plan to go out to the advisory planning commissions in May. So they will be engaged soon, and they will be busy.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. In my inquiry is around the land management software, and I don't quite have a clear sense of the benefits to, like, I guess I have an understanding of the sense that it's going to assist in the streamlining of processes and internally within the divisions, but can you help me to understand how the public is going, or how it will manifest or be implemented public facing, and how it will be of benefit to, you know, us as decision makers? And is it going to help in efficiency? Is it going to help in the look and nature of our reports? Can you give us, I guess I really haven't had a clear understanding of the net benefits that it's going to provide to not only us, but to the public.
Thank you. So, and Michelle Pressman, our Manager of Development Services, is here managing that project and will add if I miss anything. But yeah, so the intent is to move from a system where we're managing literally hundreds of files in an Excel spreadsheet to a proper database that has an interface that's accessed by, you know, our staff, allows us to track and update applications via this interface, but also allows the public to make applications for permits or their development applications online, and to submit payment online. It will allow us to more accurately track our applications, including their status, and then to provide, like I would anticipate, regular reports to committee, which will provide you details on the number of open files, closed files, the status of files, when, what status they're at, and if there's a public hearing that's coming up, et cetera. So there's going to be much more information that's going to be available to both elected officials and public and applicants. There, you know, it's anticipated there'll be more functionality via the website in terms of understanding what applications are active in your community. Right now, we have a very sort of crude system of updating that document, that PDF document that gets put up on the website. That, you know, process will be much more automated going forward. So, is there anything else that you wanted to add, Michelle, in terms of
Distributing and responding to referrals.
Right. So if you think about the development applications and referrals out to agencies and First Nations, being able to coordinate how that process happens, and then how the information comes back in, being completely automated.
Yeah, and one of the other things that I hope we'll do more of is being able to more accurately track inquiries. So we get sometimes multiple public inquiries about one particular property. And sometimes it's a fishing expedition of going to multiple people to get literally the same information. And so through the system, logging and tracking that information, there'll be, a record that says that information was provided and it doesn't have to be repeated, or the research doesn't have to be done again. So, that's just another example.
That's actually a great example, because part of the frustration that I find, and this, I don't know if other directors find this, but we get a call from someone who's maybe frustrated with a application that's been in process for some time. And one of the things that you and your staff have reported to us in the past is the volume of incomplete applications that we receive. And it's a real challenge when we get a call from an applicant that says, I don't know where this is, and they could be trying to play us a little bit. And if we only knew that there was that place where we could go and where we could access something that says that, well, there's been an outstanding request for this report or that report, it would be helpful for us to be on the same page as staff, so that we're not, basically offering different information than what they have, and it would be helpful for us to know that as well. And I think you're right, there are the odd occasions where people are seeking information from different staff people until they get the answer that they want, and if they don't get the answer, that's when they end up calling us. So I'm hoping the software will be of assistance in that as well. So that's enough for me for right now. Any other? Director Wilson, go ahead.
Very quickly, and it's on the same subject of the LMS, I'm a great believer in databases, especially if they're accessible by everyone, where everybody puts the same thing into one place. I have to ask, though, and I may have asked this in the past, but bear with me, this is a well-proven system. It's not a one-off arrive can thing, is it? Other authorities are using it. It's well used and well proven by other users.
I will tell you that both the software integrator and software went through a fairly exhaustive RFP process, and so we're quite satisfied that the product is going to work for us. But it's a process to work through, implementation of a major piece of software, and it's I'm sure been a really interesting process for Michelle, who's a planner by training and now is sort of an IT project manager as well.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Joe? Okay, so I guess to sum up, excellent report. We've got some consideration around the direction of the MOCP, local area plans, comprehensive zoning bylaw, and what steps to take. I think that you'd indicated that if we are looking to expedite, there's some restrictions around that, not only in resources, but being able to acquire the resources or reallocate the external resources that we brought to play. Would it make sense for us to revisit this at our next Electoral Area Services Committee to give you direction on which way to go, and if there's additional information that we require in the interim, we can reach out to you? Do you have anything to add, Director Nicholson?
Yeah, I think we should have some more discussion on, or how we could move forward on perhaps integrating those what it would cost or what it would look like to integrate, because I really honestly would really like to see us try and get some zoning bylaw done as fast as we can, or in conjunction with an MOCP fast-tracked as well. The other thing I also was thinking, I think that we should try and stay on top of this more than once a year. So it would make sense to me, I think, because this is really important business that we do at Electoral Area Services. I would really like to see the work plan come back with a progress update, quarterly, would be helpful. So that, if things start to go off, because I feel like I haven't paid it, obviously I feel that that it hasn't happened in a timely way, so I take responsibility for not knowing about that. And so if I don't ask for the information, I may not get it.
Chair, I will say that I should mention that Mr. Postings will be coming forward with a report on the strategic plan and the development of the strategic plan in the Cascade product, and we'll talk about, there'll be an opportunity to talk about regular reporting on the strategic plan. And then obviously with the strategic plan come the operational plans, which is basically what I've shown you here today. And I think that the board will have the opportunity to kind of workshop its expectations around reporting intervals and level of service at a upcoming workshop.
Well, and thank you for that, and I think in addition to what, Director Nicholson had said, I shared a story with, I think it was Director Segal in the director's room about a predecessor of yours, a couple of terms back that had quite often, and I don't know why the number 44 stuck in my head, but he'd indicated that if the committee wanted something new, that we would have to reprioritize something, one of the 44 different projects that he had on his list. And so, of course, silly me, I went and counted all of the items that are on your list, and there's 48 of them. And I don't think we have any more staff than we did back then. So I think that maybe an exercise, even just for the awareness of committee, to know what our priorities as far as those 48 items, and then the appropriate resources can be allocated to them would be an exercise that's worth having. So with that, I don't see Director Nicholson, something else
So
to
just
close?
just to clarify, is it going to be possible to do some sort of an integrated thing, or look at the possibility of doing that? And how do we make that happen?
Ms. Sherrill.
So my hope is that you would get the reports from the divisions on what their proposed processes look like going forward. And I know that both strategic initiatives and community planning have sort of looked at changes to their originally anticipated processes, just in part, I think, with strategic initiatives anyway, due to some of the levels of participation around the local area plans. But we'll have a conversation as a management group around how the projects could more effectively dovetail together, which I think is what you're wanting to see, and how we can deliver that. Because I think that it appears that there's a consensus here around not wanting to prolong the process and wanting to see a comprehensive zoning bylaw adopted sooner. I was going to say zoomer. Sooner rather, we'll zoom, sooner rather than later. And so we'll go back and have a discussion about that. I don't know that you need to make or pass a resolution here today about that, but I can report back perhaps at the next meeting.
Well, that's reading my mind. I'm wanting to not pass a motion, but give direction that be researched, the option 3 that you didn't include in your report. It seems to have gained some traction here, but I think we would like to see updated timelines and additional costs and availability of resources and the ability to access those resources as well. So if you can take that as direction, that would be wonderful. And I'm looking around the room and look to Director Acton. I don't see any further questions. So Anne, thank you very much for your report. Ms. Ferguson, what's next on our agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have no unfinished business, no new business, and then we're on to question period.
So that lets me test drive this, where the question period is an opportunity for the public to ask a question regarding the business of the CBRD. The question period allows for an allotment of 15 minutes and is comprised of 2 parts. The first is reserved for questions directly related to agenda items. If there's time remaining, questions may be asked on a matter of public interest related to the CBRD jurisdiction. Each questioner is permitted to ask one question plus one follow-up question related to the answer. The question must truly be a question and not a statement of opinion or a speech. Questioners must avoid personal references, insinuations, violent, offensive, disrespectful remarks about another person, and unparliamentary language. And it's just occurred to me that we may want to rewrite this a little bit for committee, because generally committee doesn't take on responsibilities of a general nature or regional nature. So with that, would anyone like to pose a question to the chair?
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know it's a long day, so I'll keep it brief. I just want to ask a question in relation to R3. Speeding is of a very big concern in all areas, and I believe, the public has taken some steps in my area, and it's a speech, but there's a question. We engaged with the RCMP at a local meeting because we had 3 high-speed accidents in less than 2 weeks, and another one in less than a month in a specific zone in our area. We attended the community meeting held by the RCMP, and we built up some momentum because it was added to their work plan. They promised resources to come to our area, which we've already witnessed. And I spoke to Ms. Miles Wilson on the break about it, and she asked me, well, has it made a difference? And I had to think about it, and it has, because we're not seeing those complaints on social media as a result, so I think it is. So my question to you is, we have a need, we've built this momentum, the RCMP detachment officer in charge had also volunteered to go to MOTI on our behalf. How do we move that together with the ESC and what you are approaching MOTI with?
Great question. I found that the activity of individual directors and working with the other agencies seems to be more effective than local government going en masse as a group to another order of government. I can tell you that the RCMP have been great allies in this, and people seem to be enthusiastic about participating, at least for a time, in the speed watch programs and the like. So I encourage everyone to continue on that front. Engage your area director. I know that I'll just bring a personal anecdote in that we had complaints of speeding through one of my communities, and it was at a time when you wouldn't think that there would be speeding, but they clocked a vehicle going 136 kilometers an hour in a 50 zone at 4:30 in the morning, which required the RCMP to be out doing speed control at 4:30 in the morning. It takes all of us consistently over time to make the kind of changes, and so include everybody, include your area director. If your area director can't participate, their alternate in their absence, and keep holding each other up and moving forward.
Thank you, and my area director was at that meeting and very much involved, so thank you for that.
Seeing no other questions, next on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have closed session.
Oh, geez, we do, don't we? Motion to resolve into closed session under?
Yep. Section 91G, I, and K.
Motion. Seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed?